Welcome to our deep dive. We're going to be talking about a period of history that's just jam-packed with, discoveries and innovations, all sorts of things. The Islamic Golden Age. I mean, we're talking about a time from like the 8th to the 13th century. And we're going to see how, the Muslim world wasn't just, keeping knowledge safe, but really, pushing things forward in science and art and philosophy.
It's really a fascinating period because, it kind of challenges this idea that, knowledge just progressed in a straight line from, the ancient Greeks and Romans right to the European Renaissance. But what we see this world really vibrant and interconnected, and ideas are flowing back and forth between cultures. They're building on this old wisdom and coming up with totally new stuff.
So it's not just holding on to the past, it's like using it to jump ahead. But I mean, golden ages don't just kind of pop out of nowhere, right? What were the things that caused this like burst of, smarts?
One big thing was the rise of the Abbasid Caliphate.
Yeah.
So just picture this, this huge empire. I mean, it stretches all the way from Spain to Central Asia, right? And the rulers, they really wanted to make learning and exploring ideas like a big deal. It wasn't just about, throwing money at it. They really created this whole atmosphere where everyone valued knowledge.
So I'm picturing, bustling libraries and these big debates and, scholars from all these different places meeting and talking about ideas. It must have been an amazing time to, be someone who loves learning.
Oh, absolutely. And one of those amazing things about this whole time period was this big translation movement. So think about it. You got Greek, Persian, Indian, even Roman texts, all these works about philosophy, science, mathematics, and they were all very carefully translated into Arabic. So this opens up all this knowledge, right, to a whole new group of people. And it meant that scholars could take the wisdom from all these different civilizations and combine it.
That's a really good point, It wasn't just about, hoarding knowledge. It was about making sure everyone could understand it and, getting these new conversations going. I can see how that would lead to, some big discoveries. Did all this mixing of ideas help with, all the science that was happening back then?
Oh, absolutely. No doubt about it.
Mhm.
I mean, the Islamic Golden Age produced some of the most, amazing scientific minds, ever.
Yeah.
Like, take Al-Khwarizmi, for instance. This is the guy who basically came up with algebra.
Algebra. Man, I remember struggling with that in school, but I guess I can't really argue about how important it is. It's everywhere, like from building stuff to, computers.
Exactly. Al-Khwarizmi's work, it totally changed how we do math.
Yeah.
It gave us this powerful tool, right, for solving problems and understanding how numbers work together. And his impact goes even further. You know that word algorithm we hear like all the time nowadays? Well, that actually comes from his name.
Wow. That's wild. So basically the foundation for like our whole digital world goes all the way back to this one mathematician from the Islamic Golden Age. That's quite a legacy. Who else comes to mind when you think of these big names in science from this time period?
Well, if we're talking about, people who really changed things, we can't forget about Ibn al-Haytham, right? This guy was a pioneer. I mean, really a pioneer in optics.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't content just, thinking about how vision works. He did experiments. He made all these really detailed observations, and he basically set the stage for the whole scientific method as we know it.
So he was like the original, stickler for evidence, centuries before everyone else caught on. It makes you wonder how much of our, modern science, how much of that goes back to him.
It's hard to overstate how influential he was.
Yeah.
His work on optics had a huge impact, not just on, how we understand how we see, but also on things like cameras, telescopes, all these optical technologies.
It's crazy to think that, one person's like dedication to observing and experimenting could set off this whole like chain reaction of discoveries over centuries. And it sounds like there were even more breakthroughs happening, in science at this time.
Oh, for sure. Another person we got to mention is Al-Razi.
Mm-hmm.
He was a physician and a chemist, and he made all these groundbreaking contributions to both fields. He was a meticulous observer and a really prolific writer. And his work had a huge impact on how medicine was practiced for centuries.
Okay. Okay, you can't just leave us hanging like that. What did he do? What were some of his like most famous achievements? What makes him stand out even in a time when there were already so many brilliant people?
Well, one of the biggest things he did was discover sulfuric acid. And this wasn't just some random experiment either.
Damn.
Al-Razi was really careful about documenting everything, describing, what it was like, and basically laying the groundwork for how it will be used later on.
Sulfuric acid might not sound all that exciting at first, but if I remember correctly from my chemistry classes, it's like one of the most important industrial chemicals there is.
You got it. It's crucial for all kinds of things like making fertilizers and detergents and batteries and even processing metals. It's hard to even imagine modern industry without it.
So another example of how the Islamic Golden Age basically set the stage for the technology and stuff we depend on today. It seems like everywhere we look, there's another connection to this incredible time period.
And we've only just started, really. I mean, remember, this was also a time of like huge progress in astronomy. Think about the night sky, right? All those stars and planets, it's vast. Well, Muslim astronomers were making these incredible observations and calculations that would end up influencing European astronomy for centuries.
I've always been fascinated by the night sky. I'd love to hear more about these astronomical discoveries, What were some of the big things they found out or the innovations that came from this period?
One of the key figures, was Al-Battani. He was an astronomer, and he made these super precise measurements of the Earth's precession, and he even figured out the length of the solar year. I mean, these were groundbreaking advancements that influenced European astronomers for centuries.
That's incredible. We often think of like the European Renaissance as the birthplace of modern astronomy.
Mm.
But it sounds like they were actually building on a foundation that had already been laid centuries earlier, during the Islamic Golden Age.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about, the practical stuff either. There was this deep philosophical curiosity, driving this whole exploration of the cosmos.
Mm.
Muslim scholars were grappling with these fundamental questions about the universe, like how does it work? How do the stars and planets move? And what is the role of humanity in this grand scheme of things?
Yeah. It's amazing to see how that scientific curiosity went hand in hand with like a philosophical search for understanding. It seems like the Islamic Golden Age wasn't just about, scientific progress. It was about like a complete exploration of knowledge and what it means to be human.
You're absolutely right. And this exploration wasn't limited to just the physical world, The Islamic Golden Age also saw this really lively philosophical scene where thinkers tackled some of the biggest questions there are about, existence, knowledge, and the nature of reality.
Oh, this is where things get really interesting to me. I'm always up for a good, philosophical debate. Who are some of the big names in this world of ideas?
Well, get ready to meet three giants of Islamic philosophy, Al-Farabi, Avicenna, also known as Ibn Sina, and Averroes or Ibn Rushd. And these philosophers, they tackle these huge questions, about existence, knowledge, and what is reality, really.
Wow, that's quite a lineup. It sounds like they were really wrestling with some pretty heavy concepts. Can you give me a quick, rundown of their main ideas and why they were so influential?
Think of them as like bridge builders. They were really struggling with the works of these ancient Greek philosophers like Aristotle and Plato, interpreting them, expanding on them, sometimes even challenging them. And their writings had a huge impact, not just in the Islamic world, but also later on European thinkers during the Renaissance.
So they were keeping these ancient ideas alive and sparking new conversations across cultures and centuries. It makes you wonder how different, the history of philosophy would have been without them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And they weren't afraid to think critically and to debate, which is really a sign of a thriving intellectual environment.
It sounds like there was a real culture of curiosity and freedom, intellectual freedom during this time. What was it about the Islamic Golden Age that made this kind of environment possible, where people could, question established ideas?
Well, there's this concept in Islamic thought called itihad, which basically means independent reasoning. It encouraged scholars